Brad Williams, Excel Prime. The most important reason for correcting Excel formula errors? Well, because you have to. We've gone over this in the past, so this will be a refresh or a reminder of what these different error messages are and how to correct them. We have the div error. The formula is trying to divide by 0 because Excel applies a value of 0 to empty cells. This error also occurs when the formula attempts to divide by a cell that is blank or has a value of 0. Well, here in this example, we have D4 divided by 0. It's going to kick out this div error because you can't divide by 0. Name. The formula uses a name that Excel doesn't recognize. In this second example, we have a name error. What we're trying to do is sum this information, and there's a typo error. Third example, NA. This is common. The formula is referring directly or indirectly to a cell that uses the NA function to signal that data is not available. For instance, the following formula, and we're just going straight up here, NA error, if A1 is equal to blank, NA, A1. Well, we just created this. Another way to do it is if A1 is empty. So we're using this formula. If A1 is blank, give us the NA error. Otherwise, give us whatever is in A1. You may want this information, you may not. You can also put an if error around the NA error if you want. So for example, we could go if error and then put 0 and close the parenthesis. It overrides the NA error. Why would you do that? Well, let's say you downloaded a bunch of information. You have endless NA errors, but you can't go back and correct the information. And if you try to add an NA error, if you try to average, it's going to throw off the result. So sometimes you want to throw an if error around an NA in order to smooth out your calculations. So we can get rid of this. Control Z. A number error. A problem with a value exists. For example, you specified a negative number as an argument or a positive number is required. Well, square root, you can't compute square root with negative. A reference error. The formula refers to a cell that isn't valid. This can happen if the cell has been deleted from the worksheet. What we did was we created a worksheet, then deleted the worksheet. That is the result. A value error. The formula is including an argument or operand of the wrong type. Now, operand is a value of cell reference that formula uses to calculate a result. Well, we had C8 plus G8. What's G8? Well, G8 is itself. We have a reference here, and that's all it is a reference. And you can't add a reference. This is formula text. We're trying to add a formula text to a value. Go back and check this. Lastly, we have a spill argument, and it says sum D9 to D10 divided by amount. What happens here is if you have something in the way, if you're blocking the spill, you're going to get the spill argument. Remove this to 0. The spill feature does its thing. And lastly, a null error. A null error occurs when a formula attempts to use an intersection of two ranges that don't actually intersect. Excel's interaction operator is a space. The following formula, for example, returns a null because the ranges don't intersect. Here we have this sum E7, E14 equals A3 to A15. Highlight this, and here's a range. It makes no sense. And then we have A3 to F5. And if we hit this range here, A3 to A5 and E17, E7, you can see the two ranges. There's no way for these to interact. Now the proper range should be somewhere in the tune within this. Should be B4 to B12. The A range should be, let's just change this up and say, let's go, we have this intersection here, which would be, there's no intersection here. D6 is below the intersection. Now, if we simply change D6 to D4, you can see there's the intersection. The blue lines, you can see these blue lines here intersect with the red lines. What's going to happen is it's going to go in, because we have a sum D4, D5, it's going to sum whatever's in this interaction. 4599 to 6044 will come up with 10683. Brad Williams, Excel Prime. Thanks for watching.